À la claire fontaine m'en allant promener, j'ai trouvé l'eau si belle que je m'y suis baignée. Il y a longtemps que je t'aime, jamais je ne t'oublierai. Sur la plus haute branche, un rossignol chantait. Chante, rossignol, chante, toi qui as le cœur gai. Il y a longtemps que je t'aime, jamais je ne t'oublierai.
Hi, welcome to episode 43 of The Gentle Knitter. My name is Nicole, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario, which is situated on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabek. How are you, friends? It's late August, and I hope that you have had a lovely summer. It has been not the best summer for us, I have to say. In early June, both Mark and I got COVID. In my case, I was quite sick, not in any life-threatening way, but basically I tested positive on the first day of my summer holidays and spent the next 3 weeks in bed. So that really sucked. We had to cancel a trip out east. Hopefully I will be visiting my parents in September. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm feeling much better. However, I still have lingering symptoms. So I'm still coughing at night. I am definitely not recovered my energy, and you could probably hear my voice. I still have sort of vocal fry from just the congestion and from all the coughing. I mean, I'm very, very grateful that I got COVID at this point, with vaccines and all that. I'm just really grateful that I didn't get it early on, because I probably would have been severely ill. Yeah, it was what it was. I'm super excited to move into fall, and I have a lot of lovely things to look forward to. We have some traveling planned. I am not going to Rhinebeck. I haven't made plans to go, and I just am not feeling comfortable going into a really big festival like Rhinebeck. I just really don't want to risk getting a second infection, because I'm really ready to move into a healthier phase of my life. As longtime viewers know, I've been kind of dragging my feet for the last many years with all kinds of different kind of chronic health problems, and I'm really over it. So yeah, no Rhinebeck, but yeah, we are looking forward to adopting a new dog later in the fall, early winter, and that'll be amazing. We really, really miss Marcel. We had a really lovely opportunity to take care of a friend's dog for several weeks this summer, and that was amazing. It was so nice to have a dog in the house again, and her dog is a complete sweetheart. His name is Dylan, and I did take a little bit of footage of me spending some time with him, so you'll see that a little bit later in the episode. But other than that, I have had a lot of time to knit, because I've just not been going anywhere or doing anything. So let me jump into that, and we'll catch up on all the making that I've been up to in the last little while. So I think I'll start with some hand sewing that I did. While I was convalescing, I tackled my mending pile, and in it I had several garments that were very well loved and needed some TLC. So I pulled out a couple of books for inspiration. One of them is a book that I heard about through Amy Beth, the Fat Squirrel Speaks, here on YouTube, and I will link below the episode in which she talks about this book, because she really gives a great review of the book, a great summary of this concept of sewing clothes completely by hand and why you would want to do that. But the idea really intrigued me. I haven't yet tried sewing an entire garment by hand, but this book is just a really wonderful resource for those of you who, not just for people who want to sew an entire garment by hand, but even just for people who want to learn how to take care of their clothes, to repair clothes. There's a lot of stitching guides and sewing techniques. And the herringbone hem is something that I utilized. I had to rehem a dress, and so I learned how to do the herringbone hem through the book. The book is just so charming. It has lots of hand-drawn schematics, and it's written in a very sort of approachable style, and just gives you a lot of resources and ideas on making handmade clothing, like really handmade from A to Z. Lots of guides of sort of ideas of things that you can make. I also have several books about visible mending. This one is my favorite. It's by Arounna, my friend who owns Beaucoup, and if you follow her on Instagram, I'm sure you've seen she posts a lot of reels that show the different techniques that she uses for embroidery and for visible mending, as well as many other handwork. But this book, I think, is a really wonderful source of inspiration for me. She has some really wonderful examples of mending clothes with different applique and embroidery, and one of my favorites is this project here. Mending a sweater that has holes. There's also some very beautiful ideas of wearable art. So these really sweet necklaces made with scraps of fabric, and some pouches. There's really a lot of different projects in the book. So yeah, I think this is such a lovely book for anybody who's interested in making things with scraps of fabrics, fixing clothing. I think it's excellent. So I thought I would show you a couple of things that I mended. One is this dress that I bought probably 10 years ago. It's a Japanese linen dress. Seeing as the dress itself is a Japanese company, I thought it would be fun to do mending with Japanese fabrics. So this is a Nani Iro print, and this is a remnant that I bought a stack of different patches that are old fabrics from old Japanese textiles. So I did sort of a quilting technique to secure them to the to the dress, and I just love these kinds of really soft pastel colors. I did another repair here. This is something that I often see in many mending examples where you basically open up the hole, you kind of tidy up the edges of the hole, and then place a larger piece of fabric underneath, and then do stitching around the patch. And so it creates this really sweet little oval repair. Yeah, so it's really been a lot of fun doing that kind of handwork. I also repaired another linen garment. This is a tunic style blouse that I've had for a long time and I've worn to death. It's one of my favorite pieces of clothing. So I did another little oval patch with, this is also a Japanese fabric. I believe it's from Merchant and Mills, but it's a Japanese seersucker. And so I did the little stitching around that piece of fabric. And then on the other sleeve, I had a larger surface to cover. So, and I had this really nice striped fabric, but I didn't have a piece that was big enough. So I actually took two pieces, I stitched the two pieces together, and then made a patch that was big enough for my sleeve. So I like this sort of tone on tone effect that it gives. So the patches they're definitely visible, but it's a really subtle repair. Last time I recorded, I talked about some experiments I was conducting with weaving. My friend lent me her tabletop loom, and I just pulled out a bunch of different yarn leftovers and just started striping. And the results, so I finished, and I really, really love the results. I will warn you, it is very wonky, it is very imperfect, but here is my wrap, if you will. So I basically made a long rectangle, and I just striped colors that I thought looked really beautiful together. So it's in my very typical palette of blues, sands, kind of rusty browns, and you'll notice that there's a lot of unevenness and a lot of kind of gentle puckering, and that's a combination of just, you know, my tension changing as I was weaving, and also because I was using different, slightly different thicknesses of yarn, and I think that that also contributed to an unevenness in the fabric. I did block it, and so it was worse before I blocked it, but honestly, like once it's kind of wrapped up around my my neck, you can't really tell, you can't really see all the unevenness. So I'm very, very happy and pleased with the results. I think it's really, really beautiful. And I am probably not buying a loom anytime soon, but I will definitely keep it in mind for future crafty endeavors, because it was very meditative, very calming. I think the process really does suit me and suit the things that I like to do. I did manage to finish a pair of socks, and these are just my usual kind of vanilla sock, except I decided to do just a plain rolled hem. So I just started knitting. I cast on 72 stitches, which is my usual stitch count. I like to knit socks at a pretty fine gauge, so I do need to have a lot of stitches so that it fits my foot. I knit socks on a 2.25 millimeter needle. That's kind of my standard when I'm using typical sock yarn. This yarn is beautiful Viola yarn dyed by Emily Foden. It's yarn that I've had in my stash for a long time. It's coming out beige, but it's a little more peachy, and it's got really, really subtle color variations. I've worn them quite a bit, so you can see that they've discolored a little bit in the foot, but they're holding up really, really well. And I did my typical little garter stitch edging on my heel. When I work the heel flap, I do garter edges. I do 3 stitches on each side of the garter flap, of the, heel flap in garter stitch. So if I'm working on the knit side of the heel flap, I'm knitting all of the stitches, and if I'm working on the purl side of my heel flap, then I'm knitting the first 3, purling to the last 3 stitches, and then knitting the last 3. And so that creates a little garter edging on each side of my heel flap. So when I go to pick up my stitches to work the foot of the sock, it's super easy to pick them up because all I'm doing is I'm placing my needle in each garter bump along the edge. And so, you know, I would have, if I usually do 32 rows on my heel, which means that I'm picking up 16 garter bumps. So yeah, so that's my lovely socks. Last time I recorded, I showed you a work in progress and that I've now finished. It's my Wheatsheaves cardigan by Elizabeth McCarten. And I knit this in a yarn called, the base is Gris, the color is Juin, and the yarn company is Le Pastel Club. It's yarn that I bought at Knit City, Montreal. And I'm so happy with how this turned out. It just has these lovely bands of a simple lace that incorporates some garter and garter on the edges. There's a lacy cuff and also lace at the bottom. So it's kind of like a sort of a cropped little drop shoulder jacket, and I really love this color, this kind of golden lichen mossy green. The pattern is super simple, easy to follow. So I have nothing but good things to say about this finished project, and I can't wait till it's cool enough to be able to wear. My last finished object is a cardigan I showed in progress last time I recorded. It's another drop shoulder cardigan. This time it's the Orchid cardigan by Julia Wilkens, and I knit it in Hinterland yarn. It's a Canadian yarn company in their Dusk base, and it is a yarn that is I think 70% Rambouillet and 30% alpaca this is the honey colorway. And just the combination of this super squishy, beautiful yarn with brioche stitch is perfection. I'm so happy with this cardigan. The pattern is really lovely, and I especially love how increases and decreases look in brioche stitch. So the cardigan is bottom up, and the shaping it's slightly more fitted at the bottom, and it goes up just a little bit. which is actually a shape that I've never knit for myself before, but I actually really like the way it looks on me. But what I especially love is how the increases and decreases look in brioche. And I'll just stand up so I can show you. So on the side, you've got regular increases to create that, that slightly V shaping. And I don't know if you can see how beautiful that ends up being. Those increases are mirrored, and it just adds like such a pretty branching effect. And then of course, when you're decreasing around the neckline, you also get a really lovely line of stitches that just add a lot of, I feel, a lot of like very elegant visual detail to it. And I really like the fact that the sleeves are just in plain stockinette. So you've got this kind of squishiness of the body, but you've got more streamlined sleeves. So all in all, I'm very happy with this. I'm really looking forward to making more garments in brioche, because it's funny, people really, I think, have a love-hate relationship with brioche, but I really enjoy knitting it. I find it very meditative, because you are slipping stitches as you go, and yeah, I didn't find it difficult at all. I think once you become familiar with picking up, if you've kind of missed one of your yarn overs, if you learn how to fix that, it becomes a lot less intimidating. So if you're not sure about knitting a brioche garment, I would really recommend that you look up some videos on YouTube on how to fix mistakes in brioche, because once you're comfortable with that, it's really not stressful to knit brioche at all. And yeah, so it definitely won't be my last brioche sweater. So after my relatively successful cardigan FOs, I wanted to turn to a colorwork pullover that I could wear, something that was slightly cropped and maybe boxy to wear over dresses this fall. I cast on several different things. I did a bunch of swatching, and I don't know why, I just could not make anything work. It's something that I probably should talk about more here. The fact that I do start a lot of things that don't end up, that I don't end up finishing. It's partly because I'm pretty picky, and if I don't like how something is looking, even if I've invested a lot of time into it, I will just be ruthless about ripping stuff out and starting over. So sadly, I don't have a colorwork cardigan project to show you. When I tend to have tend to get thwarted in a certain specific project, I'll often just completely switch gears and just, you know, cleanse the palette, if you will, and just knit on something that is that I know is going to be easy and successful. And one of the things that I love to knit that is easy to do is knit on simple and cozy shawls. With shawls, you don't have the issue of fitting. So I started a new hap project, and this pattern is called Picnic on the Path Hap. It's a pattern by Patricia and Fortune. It's a large square shawl, so it's knit on circular needles, and of course you start at the center. So it's very difficult for me to show it off. It actually looks sort of like a beret right now, but it's a simple shawl that has these regular eyelet rows, and it it's the kind of project that basically just allows the yarn to shine. And this yarn is definitely one that deserves that spotlight. The yarn is by Wollentwine Fiber Studio, and it's a beautiful yarn. It's naturally dyed. It's this gorgeous kind of warm nutmeg color, and actually the color is called caramel, and the base is 75% Blueface Leicester and 25% mid-brown Masham. And so you get the brown base adds a lot of depth to the color, and the BFL adds luster. The other shawl I'm working on is a beautiful pattern by Sophia Camaborn of the Camabornia channel here on YouTube, and it is a pattern that she released in pieces. So she calls it her puzzle shawl pattern, and it wasn't a mystery cal in the sense that she had shown what the final shawl would look like at the beginning, but released different pieces of the puzzle over 4 weeks. And all the pieces are out now. All the puzzle pieces are out. I'm still working on it, but I'm almost done. And this shawl is just a festival of texture. And so you start off with some beautiful seed stitch or moss stitch, double seed stitch or moss stitch, and then triple, and separated with some garter and of course some eyelet increases. And it's just been so lovely and rhythmic, and I've really enjoyed working on it. The yarn I'm using is Nutiden yarn in this beautiful colorway. It is a very soft kind of seafoam green, aqua, blue. It's got a lot of different colors in it. So I cannot wait to finish this. This will be so light and airy and cozy to wear. Oh, and it smells so good. It's got the sheepy smell of the yarn, but on top of that I was wearing some hand cream that is got some essential oils, and it's worked its way into the yarn, so it's just really heavenly. As I mentioned earlier, I am not planning on going to Rhinebeck in the fall, but last week I did get a chance to do a little bit of a yarny festival adventure. And actually, I was not planning on going to Twist, which is a festival that happens in my general neck of the woods. It's a beautiful yarn festival that happens every August in Saint-André-Avelin, which is in the Petite Nation area of Quebec. It's a really beautiful area, and they hadn't been able to have Twist for the last couple of years because of COVID. I talked to a friend who was vending, and I talked to her on the Saturday, and she said that unfortunately it wasn't very busy this year because, you know, COVID, I'm sure, but also the economy. I think a lot of people are really cutting back on expenses. So she said that attendance was down at the festival, and that it really wasn't very crowded. So my husband said, well, why don't we mask up and go? So on the Sunday, the last day of the festival, we decided to drive up and had a really amazing time. It was so nice to get out, especially after having been stuck at home for so long, not feeling well. So we had a lovely walk around. I did some filming, so I wanted to show you some of my favorite vendors that I visited while at the festival. When I looked at the vendors list for Twist, I was really excited to see that Prado de Lana was going to be at the festival. I usually see them at Rhinebeck, and they produce some of the most beautiful natural wools. And when I was at Rhinebeck many years ago now, I had seen a sample of the Sanic shawl by Donna Smith, and it was knit in their yarn, and I just fell in love with it. So I bought yarn to make the shawl, but I realized when I got home that I was short a skein. So I had decided, okay, well, I had enough yarn to knit another shawl pattern, but I just kept regretting that I didn't have the yarn to knit this specific shawl. So when I saw that they were at Twist, I thought, maybe they would have more of this yarn and that I could buy that extra skein that I was missing. So I visited their booth, and they did not have the exact yarn that I had originally bought. So this is the yarn that I bought at Rhinebeck, and it's a 2-ply sport, 100% Romney, and it came from 2 specific sheep, Brigitte and Bruce. So I had brought my skein with me, and unfortunately they didn't have this color. However, they had the same base, or the same weight yarn in a different blend. So this is from Anna, Basil, Clarabelle, and Ignace, but it is 100% Romney, a 2-ply sport again, in a slightly darker color. You can probably see that, yeah, that shows it quite well. So, you know, at first I walked away. I was like, oh, too bad they didn't have the color I needed. But then I started thinking about that pattern and how it has a garter border on it. And I thought that, you know, it would be very beautiful to kind of have a 2-tone version of it, and just do the border in this slightly darker color. So I'm really excited that I picked up this extra skein to knit that shawl, and well, I'm sure you'll get to see it in the not too distant future. Continuing on the theme of booths that I was excited to visit, was a booth shared by Sunflower Knit and Luddite Yarn, and I picked up 2 skeins at this booth. The booth itself was, you know, one of the stunners of the show. Ash is the dyer behind Sunflower Knit, and they are a natural dyer, and the colors that they produce are the variety of colors and the way they were displayed in this insanely beautiful muted rainbow. It was so difficult to make a selection. In the end, I chose this yarn here, which is which is dyed with pomegranate, and so it's a warm golden yellow. The wool itself is 100% Canadian wool, single ply. It's got 432 meters, so it would be enough to do a smaller shawl or scarf, or to do some color work in a sweater. So I picked that up. And then Luddite Yarn, Kalia is the producer of this yarn. She does also natural dyes, but she had some of her naturally colored yarn, and this stunning stunning skein of yarn is her Hill and Down fingering in the black heather, and it is 100% black Welsh Mountain and Charolais cross. What Kelly was telling me is that the Charolais cross introduces a little bit of this whitish fiber into the mix, if you will, and so you get this stunning heathered effect, and it's a really beautiful, very soft yarn. This is 420 meters, so a generous amount. Again, I could knit a smaller shawl or do color work with it. So those came home with me. Something else that came home with me is a couple of these beautiful pottery cups. The potter is Atelier Fika, and really enjoyed visiting this beautiful booth and getting a couple of these lovely pieces. I love how the potter has put little indentations in her cups, and so it just feels so nice to hold. And I'm gonna take a little drink because I am quite thirsty, my poor throat. But I love how beautiful that yellow golden glaze is. I guess I'm really into this sort of golden yellow color lately. And in fact, the next yarn I wanted to show you is also in golden yellow tones. I picked up this beautiful silk mohair by Riverside Studio in her gilded color. And I've shown Catherine's yarn before. She's a dyer that's local to me, and her colors are so beautiful. I really encourage you to check out her Etsy shop. She's got a lot of really lovely options there. With my new spinning wheel, I had to pick up some spinning fiber, and so I got two different spinning things. I picked up this gorgeous braid by Akara Yarns, and Rose is a lovely dyer, a lovely Canadian dyer, and I couldn't resist this Polworth braid. If you know anything about spinning fiber, Polworth is probably the most delicious fiber to spin from. It's so poofy, so soft. It's like a cloud. And I think once it spins up, these lovely rich rust and blue and yellow tones will probably mute down a little bit and really be beautiful. It'll be a beautiful toned down but very beachy mix. The other spinning fiber I got is this little set of bats, and I bought them from Paul from the Urso Yarn Company. And this is a mix that she put together for socks, for spinning socks. So you've got two bats of the same colors, and so basically I could go from one color to the next and spin two separate skeins, if you will, to make socks that would more or less match. The blend of fibers was very carefully chosen by Paul to be durable, and sorry, there's construction out there if you can hear lots of noise. So it's a blend, it's a non-superwash, no plastic blend of 60% BFL, 20% Icelandic, 10% Dorset, and 10% Gotland. So there's quite a lot of longer fibers, which will add strength and durability to the blend. And Paul was telling me that Dorset is also is a non-superwash yarn that is definitely not long fibers, but it has a sort of naturally resistant to felting. So I'm really looking forward to spinning this up, and I think Paul's colors are just so pretty and subtle. It goes from like a colder gray to a warm gray with like pinkish overtones, and then these beautiful pink and wine colored bats, and then finally some golden browns and yellows. So I can't wait to spin this lovely set of yarns. Well, I think that's going to be it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me and for all of the support that you send my way. It's really appreciated. Wishing you a beautiful coming fall if you're in the northern hemisphere, and if you're in the south, then a lovely summer. and hope to talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.